Okay, Ricky. So I think you've convinced me that you have really solid and strong intentions of becoming an entrepreneur. Now, tell me, what do you want to know?
Well, I'd like to know what the requirements are or what maybe some people are doing wrong because I, like a lot of people my age, maybe not a lot, but uh, a good handful of people my age, have tried to start my own business in the past. And like a lot of people my age, especially, it hasn't worked out amazingly. So I want to know more or less if you've got anything that you know that maybe others don't, or maybe advice, something like that.
Sure. I mean, in general, I think what I would try to tell you is that there's a few areas that you should keep in consideration when thinking of running your own business. Okay, and those areas are really, I would kind of categorize them in passion, experience, ideas, value, discipline, action bias, patience, risk taking, openness, and many others. Yeah, but I think those are the main ones, right? Now, do you have any questions about any of these specifically?
Well, I have questions about two: openness and value. But by value, do you mean value of a product, value of the business?
So to
Or
me, that's a great question, but to me, value can really be simplified into two categories. One is solving a problem to a real human being, and the other one is creating an opportunity. So solving a problem is something that is a pain that is currently being experienced, and then the other one is, well, allowing a human to do something that they weren't able to do before. That's an opportunity. Can you think of some examples of a problem?
stores near you not having everything you'd like?
Cool. So your problem is I need to get certain things and I'm not able to get those things because the stores that I have around me, maybe I live in a small town, they don't have those things, right? That is a
Yeah,
problem, right?
yeah,
Value to that problem is enabling you to have access to a larger variety of products, or to at least the products that you need that you weren't able to have before, or that you could, but you'd have to like drive to a different town. Can you think of somebody that is solving that problem, or an industry that is solving that problem?
and what, the online shopping industry?
E-commerce. Exactly. So e-commerce is creating value to consumers, to real human beings, by allowing them to have access to a variety of products that they weren't able to have before, or that getting them before was much harder. Yeah? That is
Yeah,
one example of value solving a problem.
yeah.
Okay. And then the other one I talked about was creating an opportunity. Yeah. Allowing people to do something that they simply were not able to do before. Okay. Can you think of something that didn't exist before at all, and then all of a sudden it magically became possible?
AI generating images.
AI generating images. That's a really good example. You're creating an opportunity. Previously, to create an image, you needed to get an artist to do it. Okay, it was much more time consuming. And even as an artist, you needed to get inspiration. It was a very different approach. And now all of a sudden, anybody can go into any of these AI tools and create an image. Yes, and that is essentially creating an opportunity that wasn't there before. So opportunities are, generally speaking, very rare, especially today where there's been so much innovation happening, right? Another example of an opportunity is, you know, cars. People used to go on horses before, right? And Ford famously said once, he said, if I did what my customers wanted, if I solved their problem, right, I would have made faster horses. But he said, no, people don't need faster horses. People need something completely different. They need a car. And people were like, what is a car? And he created an opportunity. All of a sudden, people were able to have a vehicle of their own and not only go faster and go further distances, but they were even able to be able to do it when it's bad weather. They were able to go to mountains that previously was not as achievable as after. So that is creating an opportunity, and that is all value. And what I think is really important is that value is about humans. Everything you see around you is about humans. That's really crucial in terms of value. All right, so that covers value. And I think we're going to elaborate on it a bit more, but that's going to get an episode of its own. I think it's a really important topic. Of the points I listed, which others do you have questions about?
Openness. I don't even know what you mean by openness. Openness to what?
So that's a good question. And it's not an obvious one. As an entrepreneur, openness is fundamental if you want to do something that is real. It requires you to have an open mind, to understand that you're going to be right on some things, you're going to be wrong on some things. Most of us are mostly wrong most of the time. And if you are closed to external input, to external ideas, that is going to make it very difficult for you to run a business. Now, it doesn't mean you have to listen to everybody, but openness is crucial to be an entrepreneur, because without it, it's going to be hard for you to do something that is real. You need to rely on other humans. As I said before, creating value is about creating value to humans, solving a problem, creating an opportunity for humans. And you need to be able to be open to listen to those humans, to understand them. And especially get your head out of your ass in the thinking process of, well, I came up with the idea, so I don't care what people think. They need this idea. It's this famous a solution trying to look for a problem or an opportunity to be created. It has to start with the problem. It has to start with the opportunity. And that means that you need to be open to listen to others and observe and think, well, let me see what they're doing. Oh, okay, this is what they're doing. And then you go and you talk to them and they tell you, well, actually, no, I'm doing this differently. If you're not open, it's going to be hard for you to go and achieve that ability to create value.
So basically, openness you're trying to say is being open to feedback or being open to criticism, and generally keeping an open mind when it comes to things that you might not know.
Correct. I mean, keeping an open mind to everything. Great. Next.
Maybe experience. Do I have to have experience to be successful? Because if I haven't done anything in the past, I don't have experience. And then if I try to do it without experience, I fail. Then how do I solve that?
I think this is a very relevant question, especially considering your age, right? When I say that the ability to run a successful business requires some experience, I mean experience in terms of knowledge to some degree, but knowledge that is related with time and having had the opportunity to experience things. So it's less about having experience in a specific job and more about having had the opportunity to experience things and to experience what other humans have experienced themselves. So experience goes beyond just like, it does help as an entrepreneur if you have just the conventional experience of having had a job or having worked in certain industries. But when I talk about experience, I actually mostly refer to having had the opportunity to experience yourself certain things and to see what others have experienced. You being able to observe and learn what other humans are experiencing is experience. So that is specifically what I am referring to. To give you an example, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you decide you want to go into the field of medicine, for instance, in order for you to know that, you need to have had the opportunity to experience the experiences of others, to see patients, to see what are their problems and what are their challenges. It's hard to be an entrepreneur if all of your experience is just based on what you've read somewhere, either online or on some books or something like that, because you're lacking that human connection element to it. Make sense?
More or less, but I do have a question. If, for example, there were to be me and then there's another person who has had experience in the industry for ages, do you think there'd be anything I could do apart from obviously getting experience to try and have an upper hand on them?
An upper hand on someone that has more experience than you?
Yeah.
Why? Why would you need an upper hand?
Well, if you're in a market and there's another company doing the same thing as you, then obviously you try to be the bigger, the better company in that market.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you need to be worried about other companies, to be honest with you. I think you need to learn from them. And I think you need to be aware of your competition. But I don't think you need to necessarily feel the solution to that problem is not how do I beat them. The solution to the problem is focus on creating value. Make sure that what you are creating is just great and make it better. And don't necessarily spend time thinking my goal is to create better value than that other company.
For another topic, ideas. What do you mean by ideas?
So when I say that ideas are one of the things that are required for business, this is probably obvious to most people, right? They're like, well, yeah, of course you need an idea. But it's not that obvious. Yeah, like I think most entrepreneurs need to some degree some level of creativity, some level of being able to come up with something. And that creativity is what brings you to the idea. And the idea is very closely connected to your openness and your experience and you having been able to see other people and the problems that they're facing or the opportunity they need, right? But you need that ability to connect the dots. A lot of people are able to tell you, I know what that pain point is, but they're not able to say, I have an idea. I think this is how we're going to go about it. So it's an obvious one, but it's a really important one.
But by ideas, let's say, here's an example, okay? Two businesses. One has an amazing idea, but all right execution and just everything else is average apart from the idea. The idea is great. And then the other side is a mediocre idea, like barely good. And they have amazing execution, amazing everything else. Which one do you think would be more likely to work out?
Depends. Like you can have lack of ideas and execute something and have a business that is generating money. Let me give an example. There's a lot of businesses that all they do is they copy somebody else and they just bring it to the market. They make it cheaper. There's literally companies that are making fake iPhones. They don't necessarily have created something new, but they said, hey, look, people have a problem, and that is iPhones are too expensive. We're going to make a version of the iPhone that looks the same but costs, 100 times less or 10 times less, and they're going to be executing it. So idea is not a requirement to be able to generate money and to some degree to be able to generate some level of value. But when I think of a successful entrepreneur, I also think of someone that is fulfilled, that feels good about what they do. I find it hard to believe that someone who is just copying somebody else's ideas and executing it to the market has a true sense of fulfillment. Now, they're probably getting rewarded in other ways, but that to me is not a definition of a successful entrepreneur.
And again, another thing you mentioned when you were listening to the examples, action bias. What does that even mean?
Yeah, so, it's rather ironic that I'm here having a podcast. I've never really been someone that has put a lot of emphasis in my life on, read about it, learn about it, study about it, and then do something about it. My philosophy has always been just do something about it and then figure it out. And I think throughout this podcast, you and I are going to talk a lot about theories. You're going to talk a lot about the lessons you're going to learn, but nothing beats actions, taking action. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, do it, but just do it. Take action. If you want to be an entrepreneur, take action. It's great to listen. It's great to be open. There's a lot of things around the entrepreneurship that are fundamental and important. But if you find yourself that you're on a path to becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not taking any specific action about it, maybe you're just listening and taking input, and you could argue that listening and taking input is an action, but it's not executing, it's not making steps towards it, physical steps. Just start, trial and error. So entrepreneurs, sorry, go ahead.
So would you say that if someone is starting off trying to make their way to being an entrepreneur, it'd be better for them to start their own business and fail than it would to read about other people having successful businesses?
Most of the time, yes. Most of the time, yes. And I think this is the interesting value that a lot of these online scammers create when they tell you, starting a business is easy and all this kind of stuff. I think a lot of people will realize that maybe the first advice they took was not great advice. But if any advice is causing you to take action towards creating value or trying to create value, it's not necessarily bad advice. Now, the specific industry, the specific idea they may have given you may not be great. You may not have had the experience that we spoke about before. But the fact that they made you take action is actually something not to be underestimated. There's a lot of TikTokers shit talking on these business gurus and business voodoos who end up telling you, oh, just just do this, just do that, just do this, just do that. And of course, I'm not trying to say that they all have great advice, but I'm trying to say that in everything in life, there is the good and there is the bad. And if I were to look at the good in some of these TikTokers that are giving you this fake advice, so to speak, is that at least they are actually getting you to the point of taking action and wanting to do something about it. And that's why a lot of people, you will eventually find yourself like, my first few businesses failed, but they failed because I executed on a bad idea, or I did not actually understand that I needed to create value. But then you learn from it. You wouldn't have learned if you didn't take action.
So patience, maybe quite an obvious one compared to the others, but could you explain?
So this is a funny one because I've generally been an extremely impatient person. And if character traits are genetic, I'm sorry to say, but you're probably also going to be a very impatient person. The combination of the things that we talked about, passion, experience, value, action, bias, openness, but specifically action combined with patience, is almost creating a magical recipe. It is counterintuitive, but with time, if you just keep executing the action and you're patient about it, it goes a long way. I don't know if you've ever seen, there are some of these drawings or cartoons where it shows somebody digging and there's two people digging, right? And one of them, has been digging really far off and hasn't found any diamonds. And the other one, dug very little but found a diamond and he's all happy. And then the guy that has dug really far does not get any diamonds. And that's just because he wasn't patient. But then in the picture, it shows you there was a lot more diamonds. These cartoons actually tell you a lot about patience. That is a little bit what it's like. And the problem is, put yourself in the position of the guy that was digging. You've been digging at this for years and you've seen no results. But you might be just that close. So that's what I mean with patience, is that honestly, in your early years, in my early years, as long as you keep in mind that patience should be something you should strive for and not get stressed about the fact that you're not patient, that's okay. But as we are trying to cover all the possible topics of what do you need to become an entrepreneur, you should keep in mind that patience is one of them. And it will come with time. But if you're ever in a position of giving up, as you're asking yourself all the questions that you should ask yourself when you're about to give up, do ask yourself, should I be just a little bit more patient? Just let that linger and be in your head. Sometimes you do have to stop. That's not the point. But that's kind of what I mean when I say patience. I mean, in some cases, the answer is just keep doing what you're doing and be patient.
You said in some cases, but I'm sure there are a lot of cases where there's people who are working in a business and they have this mindset of, if I'm patient, it'll eventually come. But then most likely this will never come. How do you think that there'd be maybe signs or maybe something like that to show that maybe it's time to stop instead of continuing to be patient?
I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, you may have to give up for internal reasons and sometimes for external reasons. A lot of times entrepreneurs fail at the beginning. They either run out of money, or some other event happens that they are like, well, I can't control this. An industry could be shut down. There could be regulations. There could be something that simply, let's look at COVID, for instance. COVID had to force a lot of businesses out of business. Those are external factors. And then there's the internal factors. External factors are usually pretty clear, but internal factors require you to have the self-awareness to kind of determine, well, is this the right time to quit? And most of the time, you're not going to have the right answer to it. Sometimes you will make the right decision, sometimes you won't. But I would argue that an entrepreneur that doesn't give up eventually does succeed if they're open and if they're improving day by day and that they're taking action to improve. Most of the time, I think that they will eventually succeed to some degree. That doesn't mean you should never give up. That's not at all. You should have the ability to give up if you're an entrepreneur. But it should not be one of the first things you go to when you're faced with challenges.
So you also mentioned passion at the very start, actually mentioned it first, I'm pretty sure, being a key factor to having a successful business. But I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of businesses out there, at least business owners, that aren't passionate about it, but definitely have had success.
As your father, I would not want you to be an entrepreneur that is not passionate about something. And frankly speaking, I would not want anybody to choose to be an entrepreneur and not find passion in it. And that is because being an entrepreneur is a fucking nightmare. And passion is going to be that medicine that is going to make it much less painful. So you're right. I would not say that passion is an absolute required to be an entrepreneur, but I think for someone that is starting and you don't know what you're getting into, if you're not passionate about it, if you see that it's like, oh, this is annoying, but I'm going to make a ton of money out of it, so whatever, I'll just do it, reconsider it.
And this kind of ties into discipline, which you also mentioned. Without passion, then you obviously have to only rely on discipline. If you're working 8 to 20-hour days and you have no passion for what you're doing, you have to be really disciplined.
Yeah, that is correct.
So could you elaborate a bit on discipline? And if I have passion, right, then is discipline as necessary?
Absolutely. As an entrepreneur, if you have passion, you still need to be disciplined. And it's connected with patience, but it's also connected with efficiency. Discipline to me is like that ability to establish almost routines. Like your creativity and your ideas are going to tell you what are the processes and the things that you can do. But discipline is going to get you to execute that. Observing and understanding, well, I'm actually realizing that I work much better if I get a proper night of sleep, if I exercise, and then incorporating those things into your day-to-day routine, structuring your day, realizing that, well, okay, I don't make good progress. When I spend a whole month just doing one specific thing and I ignore everything else, the business doesn't have the same results. That ability to be like, well, let me structure this and let me put it in a way where I am making sure that I make time for everything, executing it in a structured, organized way, that is discipline. It's connected to patience. It's connected to determination as well. But discipline is fundamental. It's one of those things that I don't think you can truly achieve as an entrepreneur if you don't have it. You cannot achieve your dreams as an entrepreneur if you don't have discipline. It is required, in my opinion.
And risk-taking, I sort of understand what you mean already, but what are some risks that you already know of?
So you see, when I say risk-taking is an important part of entrepreneurship, I would almost argue that a vast majority of people in the world, there is a large percentage of people in the world that by nature are averse to risks. And this is why the number of entrepreneurs is relatively small, especially successful ones. And that is that an entrepreneur has to have a really fucked up relationship with risk to be able to do what they do. Objectively speaking, everything most entrepreneurs have ever done, especially at the early days, was insane. It didn't make sense. If you were to only apply your rational brain, there is an analogy that I love, and that is most people think that our emotional brain is sitting in the passenger seat and our rational brain is sitting in the driver's seat. And that is a logical thing. Most people say, well, the rational brain is driving, it's structured, it's doing things. And then the emotional brain there is just going crazy, opening the windows, sticking their head out and doing all kinds of shenanigans, yes? But the truth is that our emotional brain is what's driving. Our rational brain would not take any action. And so an entrepreneur has to have a very irrational relationship with risk-taking and fear to be able to do the kind of things that most entrepreneurs do. For the most part, there are exceptions, but I would say that's the rule. An entrepreneur needs to be able to take risks. And taking risks is not just saying, oh yeah, you just have to take risks, but it's having that relationship of being like, well, it's worth a try, it's worth a shot, and not being terrified of a failure, I would say. So this was really cool, Ricky. And I think what we're going to do is I want to dive into each one of these topics and to have like a specific session on each of them. And the next one, I would like to talk about value because, like I said, I really believe that it all starts with value. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Cool. See you guys in the next episode.